Hey guys, welcome back to Dave's Little Shop of Horrors. It's January 7th and it's about 20 degrees out. A little bit of snow on the ground. Definitely not going to be riding. So I have a project for today, and that is to change my rear rotor on my Sportster. Here she is, a little bit about what's going on here. This is a 2007 Sportster. I got it 2 years ago when it was 8 years old. I'm the third owner of this bike. The original owner had the bike for less than 5,000 miles, and he did a ton of mods to it, all kinds of chrome and stuff like that. And one of the things he did was he replaced the stock rotors with the ones that are on here now. I really don't know why he did that, but for whatever reason, the front rotor is great, but the back rotor has a lot of hills and valleys in it. There's like a real low spot here, then a big high spot, and it's just really uneven. My pads are about done, and to put a new set of pads on this really uneven rotor just doesn't make any sense at all. So if I'm going to go to the trouble, let's do it right. So I got a Hawk set of sintered brake pads, and I got a new stainless steel rotor, which is compatible. In fact, I actually got the same exact rotor, same model as the one that's on here. One of the things that I have discovered working on this bike is that a lot of the things that were done weren't really done the best way. And so there were screws that were rounded, the Torx were rounded, there were some things that were stripped, and other things that just don't meet my level of shop quality work. So with that in mind, I was really concerned about getting this rear rotor off. There's 6 T45 Torx bolts, and they're held on with Loctite. Very challenging to get these off without stripping it. They're supposed to be somewhere, I believe, 30 and 40 or 45 foot-pounds. I don't really know if they used a torque wrench when they put them on. But some of the other things I've worked on this bike definitely were not torqued properly. So what I did is I have the heat gun. I don't have a breaker bar per se, but we're going to use this. I have the bike up on the lift, as you can see, but only enough so that I can rotate the wheel to the bolt I'm working on, and then I lowered it back down because I don't want the back wheel to rotate. I want to use the weight of the bike to hold it still. So what I've been doing, I've gotten a couple of them loose so far, is I use the heat gun at full setting, highest heat, for 2 minutes on a bolt. And then I use the Torx to take it off. So I'm going to show you what that looks like now. Okay, we're going to give it 2 minutes with the heat. All right, here's my 2 minutes. And there we go. Taking it out about a half of a turn. All right, just like that. Next thing we're going to do is pop out the brake pads. Not necessary to do this to take off the wheel, but since I'm going that way anyway. So you start with this little metal cap. It's called a pin pad plug. 5mm Allen. And we're going to loosen this pin. Alright, there you go. You heard it snap free. Spin it out by hand. I had cleaned this caliper up real well not too long ago, so I knew there wouldn't be any issues getting everything apart. Alright, they're down there pretty good. Yep, they probably wouldn't pass inspection in that condition, so I definitely got the most out of those. Inside one has a little more on it, but I don't know what kind of pads these are, but I'm pretty sure they're not the stock pads because he changed the rotors. Probably changed the pads too. One of the things we're going to do, the rotor is sticking out quite a bit. I'm going to spray that down real good with brake cleaner because that rotor is going to get recessed quite a bit back into the caliper. We don't want all that junk going in there. We want that nice and clean. We're ready to take off the wheel. I loosened the bolts on the caliper. I took off the brake pads. The first thing you need to do to take the wheel off is to take off the easy clip. Just use a screwdriver, very simple, no special tools needed. This bolt is 1 1/8 inch, this nut I should say. Whenever I have to buy something this big, I usually go with something that will work with an impact gun. Not that I would use it here, but you never know. My car or something. Alright, so let's just take this off. That's all there is to that. When you take off the rear axle, you're basically going to use a mallet, tap it. There's different spacers, so you're going to need to keep track of which order these go in. I believe from the factory that this nut might be on the other side. It can be reversed, and some people do that. The service manual says to take off the exhaust. I did not. It's not in the way on my bike. Maybe because it's aftermarket. The service manual also says to loosen the rear, bottom rear shock mount. I didn't do that either. The last time I took this wheel off, it wasn't necessary. So I'm not going to do that either. Your mileage may vary. Next, got a mallet. Going to come over here to the axle and just start tapping. It's moving right away. I had this off about 6 months ago, 4 months ago, somewhere in that range, because I replaced the rear tire. So when you put this back on, you need to be very liberal with the anti-seize, and I did that as well. Let's see if I can pull it out on the other side, or if I need to. Yeah, this isn't something I'm going to be able to do with one hand and hold the GoPro, but basically from this point, this axle is going to get pulled out and spacers are going to fall. I'm going to need to keep track of what goes where, and I'll just line them up in the right order so that when it's time to put it back together, I have everything correct. Okay, I felt the left side disengaged. You can see the spacers kind of loose now. Okay, I think I just want to lower the jack just a little bit more. Just try to catch that wheel. Okay. Not sure if you could tell, but I was actually pressing down on the seat to force the bike lower, which was lifting the pressure off the axle. So I was able to pop it out. So the next thing is to get the belt loose. Okay, that's pretty much off. There goes one spacer for the left side. Both spacers are out. Looks like the belt's free. Should be able to bring this on out now. At this point, I think I need to raise the jack back. And there we go. Okay, the wheel's off. That's what the bike looks like without the wheel. The next part of this project will be taking out the bolts for the rotor. But before I do that, I just want to show you real quick the axle, in order of the spacers. Just like that. Fat one on the right side, little guy on the left side that the nut goes on. And then I'm just going to put the nut on this and set it on the shelf. Also a washer that goes in there with the nut. Alright, the old and the new. Thing is a mirror shine, as you can see. The bolt pattern lines up. Everything looks good. The new rotor does seem to be a slightly different design, but pretty much spot on. So I'm just going to do the bolt removal, put the new one on, and go from there. I'm working with Torx. Make sure you have a good catch. You know, keep the pressure downward. You don't want these to strip out on you. Get rounded. Alright, so these bolts that I'm taking out, yes, they do have Loctite, but they've also got some corrosion and I don't know what else, but they need to be really cleaned up with the wire brush, so I'm going to do that. There's the old rotor. Just going to see what I can do to clean these threads up. I want everything to be nice and clean when it goes back together. I pretty much called it when I said everything that was done on this bike wasn't really done right. I cleaned up the bolts with a wire brush. These were put in using the white thread lock, which is not what you're supposed to use. You're supposed to use 1 drop of blue, and that's why they were so stinking hard to get out. Anyway, it's cleaned up. It's time to put it back together. The service manual doesn't get a lot of detail on how this is supposed to be done in terms of specs, other than 1 drop in or on the threads. When it comes to the tightening sequence, there really isn't anything that is spelled out. So what I'm going to do is pretty much tighten them down until they you know, hit bottom, and then I'm going to use my torque wrench. The torque setting is 30 to 45, so I'll probably go to 30 or maybe even 25, and then just keep going in that direction, 5 at a time, 5 pounds at a time. Okay, the new rotor is on and it is torqued. It is ready to go back on the bike. At this point, I'm going to put the wheel into position. I'm going to start lowering the jack. I'm going to, as it gets closer, get the belt on, start putting in the spacers. Alright, the axle, or rather the wheel, bike's almost lowered into place. The axle's got a nice layer of anti-seize on it. Just needs to be thin. anti seize all over the place. You don't want it on your wheels, and you don't want it on your brakes and your hands and all that. Alright, we're getting there. Nothing's peeking. Beat the heck out of my muffler. There she is, folks. Belt looks good all around. It's right on. Jacket back up. It's turning good. Okay. At this point, time to torque it. So torque that down, and it's time to put the brake pads in. Alright, so I've torqued the nut. It goes, the spec is 72 to 78, so I went with 75. This is the C-clip. Make sure that's on the way. I know, you're not supposed to hit it with pipes. Okay, that's done. The next thing is I need to press the caliper back, the caliper piston back into the caliper. Okay, so here's where we're at. The rear master cylinder cap is removed. I'm going to loosen the bleeder bolt on the rear caliper. Throw on my drain. I have the old rear brake pad in place. I slid the pin back in. And the plan is to release some pressure on the brake line by loosening the bleeder and then pressing on the caliper, push it back in its bore. Alright guys, after trying block of wood, mallet, everything imaginable, this is what it's come to. Foot, hold the bike. You can see all that fluid that just came out. Crazy! I already put the rear pad in. Right now, I have the rear pad in place using a little Allen wrench, just holding it there. I'm going to see if I have enough room to slide the front pad, the new front pad in place. I have the old one in there right now. It feels like it's just going to fit, folks. she goes. Caliper retracted just a little more. Feels a little better. Okay, that's just hand tight. We'll raise the bike up a little bit. Wheel off the ground. See what it feels like. Oh yeah, baby. Everything looks nice and even. Great little tool to have in your garage is one of these guys, especially when looking at this inner brake. Yep. Okay, so far so good. Close up. I'm going to do a total fluid change, but that's going to be tomorrow. For now, I'm going to close up this little bleeder, test out the brakes. The bike is basically back together. Need to torque some things, do some final buttoning up, and then you got to bed in the brakes and everything. But the essentials of this job are basically done.